All right, so I think you're ready to tackle some harder ones. We have this expression right here, 5x cubed times y to the 6th power, and we have to take this entire term and distribute it across this negative 2x squared, and then distribute it again to the 4xy cubed. I'm going to go ahead and do the first term, and then I want you to try the second term on your own. So let me go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin the process of simplifying. And for this, sometimes it's easier to expand these if you're still not comfortable with exponents. I always start with my coefficients. You can't combine numbers with variables, so we want to keep them together. In this case, I have a 5 and a negative 2. 5 times negative 2 is going to be a negative 10. And then I have some x's. We have 3 x's here, that's x times x times x, x cubed, and then we have 2 x's here, that's x times x. That gives us a total of x to the power of 5. And then my y, I don't have to expand because I already know there are no other y's to combine it with. Why don't you go ahead and try to simplify this next term. Welcome back. So the first thing you should have done was multiply your coefficients. 5 times 4 is 20. And then we have 3 x's here, x times x times x, and then 1 x here. Together they have 4 x's, so that means there's x to the power of 4. Then in here we have 6 y's, y, 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 and then we have 3 y's here. And then of course, if you remember the rule, we have 9 altogether. We just add those exponents up, so we have y to the power of 9. And there you have it. That is as far as we can go with distributing this expression. Now, the distributive property does not just apply for expressions that have variables in numbers. It also applies for symbols and different kinds of operators. So I brought 3 very different looking expressions here, and I want to take the time to distribute them with you. This is no different than the ones that we had before. We have an expression of 4 times square root of 3, and we want to distribute that across both the 20 and the 2 times the square root of 3. This expression has 2 terms inside the parentheses. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to have 4 square root of 3 times 20, and I'm going to bring my subtraction sign. And then I'm also going to multiply that 4 square root of 3 times 2 square root of 3. And there you have it. Now, in order to simplify this, this works very much like the expressions we had before. So if this were 4x, and if this were 4x, what you would do is you would multiply the 20 times the coefficient, right? You can't really multiply it times the square root, even though it is a number, because it has not been taken out of the square root. We will multiply 20 times 4 to the square root of 3. Now 20 times 4, when you have 4 20s, that's going to be 80. And then we're going to keep the square root of 3. That's what we're going to do here as well. So this is 4 times square root of 3. 4 times square root of 3 times 2 square root of 3. So we know that 4 times 2 is going to give us an 8. And then we also know that square root of 3 times square root of 3 is going to be equal to a square root of 9. We know from our work with perfect squares that the square root of 9 is going to be a 3. So we're going to take this and simplify that and bring this 3 out so that we can multiply it. Now 8 times 3 is going to be 24. And our final answer is going to be that. Now we can't go ahead and subtract because we don't know exactly with precision what the square root of 3 is and what that value multiplied by 80 would be in order to get an answer. Now I want to tackle this middle one. This is an expression that you will see very often. And when we're doing the distributive property for an expression that has two terms, as opposed to what you have been doing, which is distributing one term, things can get a little bit more complicated. So we have to make sure that we do this step by step. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to tackle this expression term by term. So, just like you did the other ones, we're going to distribute the 4x to the x and to the -3, or the 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We have 4x times x, and then I'm going to distribute that to the -3, or 3. So it's going to be, now you can put in your negative sign here, your minus sign, and have 4x times 3. And so you are almost done, because next you have to tackle the second term in this expression and distribute that. Now the second term in this expression is a -5, and so this is a common misconception. You want to take that sign with the 5 so that you can distribute it appropriately. -5, distribute that with the x, so -5 times x is going to give you -5x, and then -5 times 3, you can bring your negative sign here, is going to actually give you -15. You already noticed that that's a double negative, so that's going to give you a positive integer in a little bit. But let's go ahead and simplify this first. We have 4x squared here minus 12x minus 5x. I'm going to cross this out as I'm going. And then that's going to give me a plus 15. Now there is some combining that I can do to further simplify this. I notice that x in this -12 and x in this -5 are to the same power, which is the power of 1. Therefore, I can combine those numbers and coefficients into 1. So I'm going to keep this x squared, 4x squared by itself, because there are no other terms that have a 4x squared. And then I'm going to multiply the -12 times -5. 12 times 5 is 70. That's going to give me negative times negative, a positive. 70, and then my x plus 15. So that is the distributive property in algebra.